Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. If you'll just give us another minute or so, we'll let everyone kind of trickle in and we'll get started. One of our presenters, Peter Ramirez, is currently having some technical difficulties, so he may be able to join us in a little bit, but for now, we're just going to give it a minute and then get started. Thank you all for joining us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our RAIN Alliance Knowledge Series webinars. This is with our Tyres Workgroup. The presentation is Learn How the RAIN Alliance is Revolutionizing the Tire Industry, presented by the Tyres Workgroup co-chairs, Lauri, Hyytinen, and unfortunately, Peter is unable to join us at the moment, but we're hopeful he should be soon. Peter Ramirez.
So thanks, Jackie. I think we can then start it and welcome everyone for our webinar for learning how RAIN RFID is revolutionizing the tire industry. So hopefully Peter will join soon, but until that, I will guide you forward. So here's a couple housekeeping topics. Jackie, can you kind of highlight the most important things?
Certainly. We would ask that you make sure that your screen name showing is your first and last name as well as your company. You can see it under your display name or edit profile so that we know who you are and where you're with. There is the Q&A function in webinar, so please, as you're viewing the presentation, if you have questions, go ahead and put those into the Q&A box and we'll be reviewing those as they go. And then if you have any questions about membership with RAIN Alliance, which you're not already, we would love to have you join, please reach out to membership@rainrfid.org. And then the presentation, this was being recorded, as you all heard, so it'll be available in Basecamp in the all members space if you are a member.
Thanks, Jackie. So antitrust policy is the same than what we have in the on the website and of course in all our working group meetings. Then it can be found from the RAIN website. My name is Lauri Hyytinen. I'm working for Avery Dennison Smart Track. I have been in the RFID industry over 15 years and mainly taking care of our business development, sales, market development position, handling especially kind of automation and automotive companies leading and building our global automotive team during the last years. Peter, I think Peter is from Michelin, and he should be our second panelist today, but unfortunately Peter is having some connection issues, and it seems that Peter is not with us yet. So let's hopefully he will join us soon, and he can share with you more about his background and knowledge about the tire industry and associations. I think Peter just joined us.
Hello, can you hear me, Lauri?
Loud and
Hello,
clear.
Lauri, can you hear me?
Yes, we are.
I just want to apologize. I have the last minute connection problems, but we have a plan for that, and I appreciate Jackie and Lauri to put that plan in motion. If you can hear me, then I'll just go audio only. And Lauri, I can't see the slide, but you're on the speaker slide. So everyone, I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Peter Ramirez. I'm in Standards and Regulations in Michelin. I'm responsible for North America's connected mobility offers. Many of you know me through the RAIN Alliance, but as we will demonstrate today, there's lots of other associations and work that's taking place. So I'm also a participant in the United States Tire Manufacturers Association, RFID Working Group. I'm a participant in ISO TC31 Working Group 10. We'll explain that just a little bit more later, as well as other working groups or task forces, which are bridging RFID and tires. And we are glad to be here today to explain that a little bit more. So I appreciate everybody's time.
Thanks, Peter. And great to have you to the call just on time. So our agenda today is that we will first cover a little bit about the Tyre Workgroup background. So what's our mission and vision for the working group, and a little bit about the past deliverables. So we have worked for a couple of years already, or the work group has been active for a couple of years already. So what have been the achievements? Also, we will share you about the current projects, kind of what are the current activities, and also what's next. So what kind of ideas we currently have for the future, and of course the Q&A part in the end, where also we are very curious to hear about your questions, which can be then fine-tune or modify a little bit our future targets and the work group kind of next activities. So hopefully you will be active, and we will have a kind of active Q&A session then in the end. But then, Peter, for you, what is RAIN Alliance?
Yeah, thank you, Lauri. This is a question that those of you who are part of the RAIN Alliance, and there are several on the call who have been part of this working group since the beginning. So we know we have that target audience who knows RAIN in and out. Maybe you're part of the board, maybe you're a leader of one of the other work groups, but we also know that there are some who come from the tire industry or from other groups, and you don't know what RAIN is, and this may be your first opportunity to participate. And so we wanted to spend the time for really all of our target audience, both those who are new to RAIN and those who are well understand its mission. And what we wanted to do is to use this slide, not as a live demo, but just as a reminder that the RAIN Alliance, first, it's an abbreviation that represents radio frequency identification. And how I like to explain it to people who are new to this is that it's very much like the Wi-Fi Alliance, the NFC Forum, the Bluetooth Special Interest Group. And what the RAIN Alliance does for the tire industry especially is it is the trade association that represents the members that are for the particular type of UHF which has been selected by the global tire industry. So it's very important to the tire industry, and the work that's done benefits not only RAIN and its members, but also tire manufacturers and its members. And so what this slide is intended to represent is there are many valuable resources that you'll see on the screen. If you were to scroll across the top, you'll see not only a list of the work groups, but the members who are the membership participants. You'll see as you scroll across the top under our technology, lots of primers that can tell you what is RAIN, and some of the resources that you'll see on the screen today originated from some of those documents. Moving along, you'll see over to the right training, which is the slide that's currently underway. We'll talk about that later. But don't forget news and events and about us. Under news and events, you'll see that there are resources, including the location for many of the resources that have been published and will be published in the future. So we hope that this is both a refresher and a reminder for those who have been here, but also a welcome introduction to those who are new.
So then we have the background for the Tyres Workgroup. And this is the associations. So Peter, I think you have the better understanding of those associations and regulators.
Yeah, thank you, Lauri. So this is a slide that is very Tyre specific, and it really is it's not an inclusive, all-inclusive slide of all of the standards development organizations and all of the regulators that pertain to tires. But I share this slide for two reasons. Tires are a very mature product. The products have been in place for more than 100 years, and they don't change very often. And the way that takes place for interoperability, standardization, compatibility, for all of those things, as well as the role of the regulators to ensure that they meet the requirements for safety first and foremost, and quality, is there are many actors who participate in that ecosystem. And I want to stress enough, this does not represent all. I know when I'm looking at this now that I see that there are several who are missing. But the point of this slide is that there is, and has been for more than 100 years, those who are put in place who are safeguarding and watching over standardization and regulatory work for tires. And tires are a very mature product, but so is RAIN RFID. Maybe not as long, maybe only for the last 50 to 70 years, but there is an equally important ecosystem related to RAIN RFID. But when we talk about the tire industry, where those two bridge together comes when we have actors who participate from both camps and they collaborate and they cooperate together. And the really exciting part of this is, well, then how do you have a revolution leading towards the title, the RAIN Alliance and its revolution, and how it's revolutionizing the tire industry? How do you revolutionize those two things for two very stable products and services? And that's what we hope to be able to accomplish here today. And on the next slide, what you'll see is an example of where that bridge comes together. So where tires and where RAIN comes together is showcased in these thumbnails. When you receive the version, you will be able to click on many of these because they're hyperlinks to the source of information. But I can't begin this story without talking about the importance and the work that's gone under the ISO Technical Committee 31, which for those of you who aren't familiar is tires, rims, and valves, and the working group that is dedicated to RFID and tires. And beginning in the early 2000s, there was work that took place in many different areas, but it came together and it culminated in what is the most important, and that is the global standardization group of ISO to put in place 4 standards. And what you see on there are just a couple of the thumbnails and the images that represent those. So what is RFID tire tags, and in particular the particular type of UHF band that is RAIN Alliance? That's in the first. The second is how is data codified, and that is in the form of the SG 1096, represented by the collaboration and partnership that we have from GS1, because that is the encoding standard that has been adopted in the tire tags. The second is how and what are the different types of attachment classifications, whether it be an inlay or a label, whether it be a patch, or most importantly, an embedded tire tag because it lasts through the full life cycle of the tire. And the last is, and what you see in that image, which is just a very small thumbnail and it's very difficult to see, is what are the conformance test methods? And all that ISO could come up with in its work, which was important, is a very simple test of a tire on a stand without a wheel mounted at 15 centimeters in order to manage conformance. And that was the beginning of, I think, what we will have as an evolution and an improvement and possibly an expansion of standards. If we move across to the right on that, what you'll see in the thumbnail is the United States Tire Manufacturing Association had and revised its Tire Information Service Bulletin, which is targeted to service professionals and those in the tire industry, particularly in the US, which is a good thing because of the focus of the 12 members who represent USTMA. And in this version, because many don't have access to the published version of ISO, and in the link, you'll see that you can actually go and you can get some basic information about ISO, but in order to purchase it, it's going to cost some money. So what we wanted is we wanted USTMA to have as an opportunity for those who are just entering into this space to the ability to be able to understand what is important around tires for US and where can we reference and point to the ISO standards. And with permission of ANSI and ISO, we were able to reproduce some of the content and put it into this USTMA document. On the bottom right, you see the Technology and Maintenance Council. That is a council that's focused on the tire and not just the tire, but the services around heavy duty and commercial vehicles. It is under the American Trucking Associations, and the TMC has a study group called S2, which is focused on tire and wheel. And they have had, since 2001, a recommended practice, and we are in the process of revising that and bringing it current to allow it to reflect what is currently in place for ISO, as well as other resources, such as what you see next. And that is in the lower center of the screen. The Global Data Service Organization is the answer to the, well, so what? Now we have a tire, now we have an embedded tag using RAIN RFID, now what? And this is where the revolution begins, because when we talk about this, and oftentimes it's referred to that RAIN does well when it bridges the virtual world and the physical world. And in our case, the physical world is a tire. Well, then how do and how can the ecosystem leverage data that's associated to that tire that is connected to that tag? And what the GDSO does is provide the cyber secure authentication along with the standard data fields of its members, which are tire manufacturers, in order to have the routing and the standard APIs to return the data that is requested in a high quality manner. And so that's what we really want to do, is to represent this. It highlights some of the key members in the ecosystem that bring this all together and make it successful.
Thanks, Peter. So if you think about then the Tyres Workgroup and kind of what's the vision and mission there. So our vision for the workgroup is to educate tire manufacturers and suppliers about the best use and best practices of the technology. We have 4 key pillars from RAIN and kind of strategy plans: how to get the items marked with RFID, the readers, software, and network. So how to collect the data, how to save the data, and then utilize it. Mission is to create educational material to the implementation of the RAIN RFID in the tire industry. And of course, to promote that and as a key enabler for tire tracing beyond the automotive industry. Last years, we have heavily focused on education part, how to educate and train the tire industry, placing RAIN RFID inside the tires. And step by step, we are moving forward for those enabling the use cases. We have very big working group. We have over 100 members at the moment. We have a monthly meeting. So it's what it is every first Wednesday of the month. And it's active. We have roughly 20-25 people normally in the meetings, and active discussions about the best practices, targets, and kind of what could be the future projects. So special thing about the Tyre working group, which I would like to highlight, is that we have all leading tire companies, active players joining the working group. So we have special setup in the working group that we have also allowed to accept non-RAIN members at the moment, the tire manufacturers for the working group, and that's opening us a great view for the industry to really understand from the tire experts how RFID and RAIN RFID could enable and help the industry to get that unique identification. Peter, could you please tell a little bit about the OKRs?
Yes, absolutely. So this is also a big slide, but there are much more details behind this at the RAIN website. What you see on this slide in the grid is the strategy for the RAIN Alliance, and it's broken into the 4 pillars that you see on the left: growing adoption, elevating brand awareness, optimizing the ease and deployment of use, and driving sustainability. And what each of the work groups, Tyres included, is asked to do is to map our work and to focus our activity on supporting the RAIN strategy. If the RAIN strategy is to grow and to expand industry adoption, then in the Tyres Workgroup, we want to be able to complement and support that. So we have the objectives and key results, and this is basically our tactical plan that supports that overall strategy. What you see on here is the refresh of this that as it was presented a few weeks ago, and it represents the activity and the specifics of the Tyre Workgroup. So under growing adoption, we have the masterclass, which is, we'll talk a little bit about that later. It's basically to present and to provide the know-how for tire manufacturers to begin to implement. We also, and this is important, want to reference RAIN and several standards each year. So I've talked already about the Technology and Maintenance Council recommended practice, but we have others as well. Under elevating brand awareness, there are key things that we're doing outside. You know, you can't take this to just the RFID and to the RAIN conferences and the ecosystem that's well understood. You have to take this to where the tires and the tire community and eventually the vehicle communities reside. So RAIN Alliance members participated in the Tyre Technology Expo, which is the largest tire exposition in the world that takes place in March in Hanover each year. There are other tire expositions. There are other forums, such as in the Consumer Electronics Show. This week, and contributing possibly to my connectivity standards, I'm attending SEMA and the Aftermarket Product Expo, which is in Las Vegas. And I'm evaluating and doing reconnaissance on how we can bring RAIN and establish it perhaps as a footing in 2024, 2025. So there's really lots of opportunities to take that to where the industry lives. Next, under deployment and ease of use, we need to finish the repoints paper that you'll learn a little bit about in just a bit, and also take and point people to the good work that's been done on our previous deliverables. And this is where the work comes on supporting GDSO. And I've talked a little bit about the Global Data Service Organization. Expanding GDSO adoption supports those who are leveraging RFID in their tires and the RAIN technology. And then down at the bottom, every tire manufacturer has and publishes a sustainability strategy. And RAIN Alliance believes strongly that it is a strong lever to supporting the ambitions of sustainability. And we think that there's a strong connection there. And whether it's the digital product passport, whether it's supporting end-of-life tires and the recycling, there are some real opportunities, and we can cross-collaborate with other work groups, such as the sustainability work group, in order to achieve everyone's ambitions. So this is just sort of an overview of what we're doing and putting it into the perspective of the RAIN strategy. And on the next slide under past deliverables, I really want to note, and I think that this is what we talked about when we decided that we wanted to do this presentation, is we felt like that there are newcomers to the work group. There are some who are even new to RAIN, and it's maybe not obvious to them some of the contributions in the past. The first thing that was done when this work group was launched in 2020 is they identified a need that even though there were the 4 ISO standards, there are tire manufacturers who could read those standards, but they could still maybe have some missteps. And thank you to GS1 and to the lead author on this, Claude Tetelon, as well as a cross-section of tire industry representatives and RAIN industry representatives. The first deliverable was a guideline. It's roughly just under 50 pages that steps through how to do the codification. It's not enough just to say that you want to do SG 1096. There are some steps that could be overlooked, and this guideline was the first deliverable and has become a valuable resource since. And then for those of you who have been with RAIN for several years, there was the difficult challenge that after we joined the work group, we had COVID and it was a virtual only. But we had a really fun and engaging way to participate in that through virtual only sessions. And I think one of the hallmarks of that was the first ever dedicated Tyre and RAIN event. And that was in the form of a digital Tyre Expo. And what you see on the screen are the representatives who happen to be presenting. We did that all in a very virtual and very safe space, but while continuing to advance our cause. And so we think that these are probably 2 of the more notable things that have been delivered by the Tyre Work Group in the past. Under current projects, and I'll let Lauri advance to this. I'm going to go through these slides rather quickly. So I'm going to read the top of the slide, and in the interest of time, for those of you who are participating in the Tyre Work Group, this is very well known. For those who are part of RAIN and the broader ecosystem and other work groups, you're taking note and paying attention. But if you're new to RAIN and this is perhaps of interest to you, we want to make sure we talk a little bit about that which we're working on, because there are a lot of things that take place when we're talking about this particular item. And in the stack that we refer to, where it's item, in our case, it happens to be a tire. And then before that, even if there's a tag, which is embedded in a tire, it is a very unique situation. The tires, present some unique performance challenges because of the composites and the size and the way that they're oriented. That's what the masterclass is all about, is to teach that know-how. As well, how tires are and have been stored is very well established, and they present unique challenges to the RAIN ecosystem. And what we wanted to do with this project is to try to identify and to address some of the pain points that solutions providers were finding, which is to say, how do we best set up a configuration that takes advantage of a tag, an item, in our case a tire, a reader or sets of antennas, as well as all the computing and the networking that take place at the other end of the stack. And what we did is we wanted to identify and to begin to create a vocabulary around read point configurations. So this first slide just really represents, if you're familiar with tires, they can be a single, they can be stacked. We knew very quickly that a piled stack of tires, whether wheel mounted or not, was out of scope. And then the question is it wheel mounted or not? And so what you see on here is kind of a decision tree that was the beginning of the conversation. On the next slide, you start to see the different ways that a tire can be organized when it's especially attached to a vehicle, because that's a really important use case, and it represents a pain point for a lot of how we're going to use this after it's been mounted onto a vehicle. So whether it's a handheld reader or a handheld tire, and that's important because handheld tires present lots of ergonomic challenges. And we'll talk a little bit about that probably in the Q&A. There are in place, especially in competition, examples of drive-bys. The term gate is often used. So when is it a drive-by? When is it a drive-over? When is it a gate? And we also know, especially with OEMs, that in the manufacturing and the industrialization phase of vehicles, that there are lots of ways that vehicles and wheel and assemblers are using RAIN in their factories, and we wanted to take into account those things. So we really wanted to create a standard definition and vocabulary. And what you see on the next slide, and this is a reminder, this is kind of the why we do this. This is a project data sheet. So every new project in RAIN Alliance has to go through the creation of a project data sheet that gets validated by the work group and then the board. And in here, it's also very thumbnail, but difficult to see. You can see what we're trying to do. We're not, and this is important, we're not in the scope of this project defining the specifications for distance, volume, speed, a lot of those other things. We are, however, trying to clarify and educate and define terminology, which is what you see in that first line under the proposed project. And we're well underway. On the next slide, and I'm going to move very quickly on this, and I think this highlights that the Tyre Workgroup is unique because it has a very strong representation from RAIN members. It also has a very strong representation of participants who come from the tire industry. And what you see on here, and the only way towards success, is if we have broad industry adoption and broad industry consensus of how we do this. So we have brought in a lot of experts from multiple tire manufacturers, many of the big brands, not all, but many of the brands who are considering RFID and RAIN, and they're contributing to this project. And just a few more slides on this next. This is just a thumbnail that talks a little bit about the deliverable of where we are. So far, what we've done is we have drafted the frame of the document. The deliverable of this will be a published paper. It will be available on the RAIN website, available for free to all members. And what we're doing right now, after we got through the executive summary, the scope, some introduction, and some just brief description of use cases, now we're working on the middle, which is in that section, which is in the yellow, which is the tough part, which is really now let's talk about configurations. Now let's talk a little bit about the specifics here. And that's where we are with this project. On the next slide, what you see is just one example. If you were to explode those thumbnails, is we talk a little bit about a read point configuration. This term exists, but it kind of doesn't exist. And we have some who say, you know what, maybe the best term isn't even a read point configuration. We'll debate all that and work that out. But in the relationship and what's in scope, what we're talking about here and in the box at the lower left is when an item, in our case a tire, and a tag and a reader are in relation to one another, it really is to address the pain point that I hear often, which is it doesn't work, or it doesn't perform, or it doesn't meet my expectations. And I always think, well, what do you mean by it doesn't work? Is it not reading? Is it not reading with the accuracy that you're looking for? Are you trying to read more tires? Are you picking up tires that you shouldn't be? And so this idea of a definition of what is a read point configuration is intended so that those who are new to RAIN and those who are integration and solutions providers can come together with that common vocabulary and that common terminology and begin to come up with solutions that meet their needs. And so here very clearly what it says is what is in scope, as well as next, which we're not going to display here, is what is out of scope. And I want to highlight that second paragraph. We're not talking about specifications. This is a guideline. This is about common terminology. And the very last point on this is, and I really want to emphasize this because we're stuck a lot with who is our target audience. We're talking about that already today because we have a very mixed audience, and we needed to define who was our target audience, because as we're doing this, we have people who are experts in tires, and we have people who are experts in RAIN, and maybe we have some who are very knowledgeable about both. But as you can see on here, we're also appealing to the people who, in this last paragraph, are new to this, and they're yet to define or even understand how RAIN becomes a solution to a problem that they maybe haven't even identified. So this document is really intended to break through some of those pain points, to begin to identify them, and to begin to allow the ecosystem to more fully leverage, using this document, all of the actors within and all of the members within the RAIN Alliance to help them with those solutions. And that's the last update that we wanted to have on the Read Points project. We can entertain some questions later if helpful.
So the Tyres Masterclass, I think you have most likely heard about that. So we have the first time that in Hanover this year, in Germany, beginning of the year. So the target was to collect all the experts to one place to offer the training, education, and share their ideas that how RAIN RFID can kind of help the tire industry moving forward. We received very, very good feedback of the first masterclass, and we decided, or RAIN board has decided to create that again in Yokohama, Japan at 28th of November. I think there's still a couple seats available. So if someone is interested to join the Tyres Masterclass, so please get back to RAIN very soon. So it will be fully booked, most likely in the following weeks. And based on this, I think there's also the plans to continue the masterclass, and hopefully we will see more masterclasses in next year in the different regions. So what's next? Peter offered you kind of a great view about what kind of activities we have had in the working group with the tire companies. And that's a special thing, that we have direct communication with the tire manufacturers. And we are kind of actively working together to get tires marked with RAIN RFID. And that has been the main target for us. So main focus during the last couple of years to make sure that all leading tire companies is aware of, and we support them to be able to mark the tires with RFID. Now we see, and especially we had a face-to-face work group meeting at Wiesbaden during the WIoT meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we started to think about the next steps. What's in the future? Tires will have RFID, but what are the use cases, applications, how to explode the market and create the market pull for that? We have applications and kind of who's getting the benefits are car manufacturers, logistic companies, trucking companies, of course the tire manufacturers as well for retreading, reusing applications. So that will be, we will step by step shift our focus for those end use applications, help that lifetime identification of the tires and driving the market forward. So if you are interested to see where the market is going and support the market growth, our Tyre work group is one tool for that, and we will heavily focus on those topics in the future. As Peter explained, the Read Point project, for example, is exactly dedicated for the end users, helping them to utilize the technology and create the successful applications. Upcoming RAIN meetings. I think, Peter, you have more information about those.
I do, and this is really kind of just a public service announcement to make sure that everyone on this call knows the upcoming RAIN meetings and begin to put it into your forecast, into your budget. I know that these are very dedicated to RAIN, and they're very dedicated to all of the members and all of the different end user categories. So not only tires, but we also have pharmaceuticals, we have retail, we have many different categories. We think that tires are the most important, but the reality is that RAIN supports all a tagging of all items. But we want to make sure that you're aware at least of the events that are going to take place next year. The selection of these is intentional. It's not just where RAIN wishes to grow, but also we know we have growth, and we have expansion of some of the use cases in markets for both Asia as well as Europe. And so that's very exciting for us to be able to bring these to those areas. And maybe it's not possible that you can attend the conference, but we want to try to set up meetings and other events. Could be the masterclass, it could be other things that could be adjacent to these meetings. So we really want to make sure that you have a chance to put these into your calendars and to save the dates. We're also, and this is important too, because I'm in the US, and we think that we're the center of the universe here, even though many others may not agree with that. But in reality, when it comes to the tire and vehicle market, the U.S. often represents about 40% of the market. And so that's important. And so we're very pleased to hear that there are plans to bring the RAIN Alliance to the U.S. or to the Americas. It could be South America in 2025. And to echo what Lauri was pointing out, we hope that we can bring the masterclass to the U.S. sometime next year or soon after. So main point here, save the dates and also look for opportunities, because there could be events or activities or conferences that you're aware of that are more familiar to you and your sets of members and your sets of customers or suppliers. So let us know, and I guess this could also be an opportunity, what events are interesting for you and are in your regions where you think it could be helpful to have a presence. Maybe it's the RAIN Alliance, or maybe it's somebody from the Tyre Workgroup. So this is also two-way communication for us to ask you to share with us the things and where happenings are occurring over the next few years.
Yeah, and like Peter said, we as a Tyre working group, we have been very active and innovative, and we are willing to drive new things forward. So if you have ideas, if you have requests or proposals, don't hesitate to contact us. You can contact either Peter or me directly, or then the RAIN, and propose the next activities. We are always happy to drive those forward. I think that was the last part of our presentation, and we can then move to Q&A part. Jackie, is there any questions in the Q&A area? I can't see that at the moment.
Just one moment, please.
I think also for all the participants, if I understood correctly, you can also ask the questions. You can unmute yourself, and you should be able to ask the questions if you have something in mind.
Lauri and Jackie, while we're looking for questions, and because we wanted to move through the slides at a pace that allowed for lots of Q&A, maybe can I go back and make a point about one of the slides? Maybe it's a question, but maybe it's just good use of time.
Sure.
We actually have a couple questions. One from Mario.
Okay, good. Let's do that.
I know we were speaking about RAIN, but what do you think to integrate something like NFC to give support even to the end user? So Mario, just to use NFC as a means to be able to read this band of UHF tire tag. Is that the question?
I think it's kind of what we think about the integrate something towards the end users. So kind of
yes, as consumers.
Yeah. So RAIN is required special reader, and NFC could be read with the standard mobile phone or smartphone. But I think kind of in RAIN Alliance, we don't really focused on NFC technology, and kind of our key focus is on UHF, RAIN, transponders, and that technology to drive that forward. And of course, then we can consider if there's kind of a cross-link cooperation, kind of a benefits to implement on other technologies, but the main focus is on the RAIN RFID. Something to add, Peter, from your side?
Yeah, I like the question because it allows us to consider other possibilities, and it addresses one of the pain points, and that is somebody who's handling a tire, which could be more than 100 kilos, especially if it's wheel mounted, and if they're required to handhold a reader, and if they're using another device that is interfaced to that reader that's collecting information or using some kind of a display with an interface, and then they need to also maneuver the tire because they're having to rotate it or moving it around in a rack. I hear from people, hey, I don't mind doing this. I just need more hands, and it's just me. And so I like the question because it's both a call to action to say that we need the ability to be able to have solutions that can both read reliably the UHF RAIN tag in a tire and satisfying all of the performance specifications and expectations that you get from that, as well as then how do we perhaps interface that using BLE or something else to another device to interface, because that's where this revolution takes place, is it's connecting multiple devices, maybe on different frequencies, and how can they all work and interoperate together in a way. So I like the question because it really gets us thinking about the possibilities. And my first reaction might be that it's just not going to work. But in reality, the question really opens up our perspectives to something that maybe hasn't been produced yet, or maybe it's to try to get the RAIN Alliance and the tire industry to really advocate for the creation of those kinds of devices that can satisfy those, but maybe while staying with UHF and RAIN as we know it.
Okay, our next question, would you recommend to people from the automotive industry, vehicle makers, to join the Tyres Workgroup?
I would say,
yes.
Sorry, absolutely, yeah, and I agree with Peter. You saw the kind of a picture which I presented earlier. So we are moving the focus more and more for the end-use applications. And we have had the excellent position that we have had those tire experts in the working group. When we are moving to end-use applications, it would be great to have those experts who understand the pain points, the needs, and understand also the benefits of technology then for the end users. So it would be great to have more of those kind of end users for the working group, and then we can hopefully better find the benefits and drive forward the benefits towards you.
Yeah, Lauri, if I can add to that, the answer is yes, and it's an opportunity to make sure that this group knows that there are other work groups, and one other work group is the smart mobility. And that work group, while we're dedicated to tires, they're looking at the larger vehicle identification, whether it be for a tolling application or for electronic vehicle identification, for parking lots, for lots of other. There's many different scenarios where vehicle identification, and then you have to think about, well, what about all of those other automotive parts? And I remember a slide that was presented in the Greenville RAIN Alliance conference about market research. And for those of you who have that market research report, it talked a little bit about attachment rates, and it went through each of the different sectors: food, cosmetics, luggage for airlines. I think airlines in general, because there's lots of things that are tagged on an aviation equipment. And it went to automotive, which had the lowest attachment rate. And I don't remember the numbers offhand, but it was somewhere in the billions, and the attachment rate was something like 0.003. And so think about all of the different parts of a vehicle that can be identified and need to be identified, where RAIN plays a role. So this is bigger than tires, and that's where the vehicle participation comes into play. Is yes, of course, tires are one of the items, but it's not the only item. And I think that's really where we have a tipping point where we can rapidly grow this and do it in a way that takes into account and fully leverages the role that RAIN members play to make that happen successfully.
Thank you. We have a question from Cedric Mayer. Is the use case mainly a logistic and conveyance tag UHF? In what extent is it different from shelf labels, for instance? It looks like there are not current technological changes to the current tire labels. Am I wrong?
Yeah, Lauri, I think that you and I both can contribute to that. Would you like to begin, or shall I lean into that one? Because it's a very good question.
It is, and as kind of you have heard earlier, there's lots of different use cases and applications. The main focus lately has been embedded RFID tire tags. So then a special transponder which is placed during the tire production inside the rubber. So that's the technology which could offer the lifetime identification for the tire. So of course the labels is for the logistics, and it's also used, but most part, if you think about the work group now, most focus has been this lifetime identification for the tires, which then requires embedded product inside the tire. Peter, something what you would like to add?
Yeah, I want to thank Cedric for the question, because it's often the first one that we receive. You know, ISO allows for the 3 attachment methods, and the label is one that is probably deployed by more actors than embedded, and it works, and it fully satisfies what you described, which is inventory distribution up to the point where it's put in service, because you know a label on a tire won't last long. But the real and that could be beneficial for somebody considering this. It may actually satisfy the ROI to adopt RAIN. And so we want to make sure that, and we want to respect ISO that is perfectly okay. But the long-term vision of this, and when we think about digital product passport, when we think about eco design for sustainable products regulation, when we think about sustainability ambitions of tires, they're looking at tires through the end of the life. And so at the end of the life of a tire, maybe with a tire that's actually been damaged and it's now in a recycler, it's going through a sorting process, and it needs to be sorted so that the recycler can very efficiently and very accurately treat that appropriately. Well, now we need to think about that at the end of the life. And then in between, there are so many different use cases in service, in assembly, in balancing. And I really want to emphasize there that that's what makes embedded so special is that it does work through the life of the tire. And that's why we advocate more strongly for an embedded tag. But we don't want to discount how an inlay or how a label that's attached to the outside of the tire could be beneficial.
Mario just added a comment of going back to the NFC along with RAIN tags. With 1 or 2 tags in the same tire, we can reach industry and consumer at the same time. So just as a comment, it looks like.
Yeah.
Stuart Plimsoll, and I again apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's names, asked which tire manufacturers or brands are already doing RFID source tagging?
Well, so I'm not going to answer that question, because the whole spirit of the RAIN Alliance has been to be vendor and IP neutral, and we really want to make sure that we represent all members appropriately and all participants appropriately. So I'm just going to politely decline that, if that's okay. And as well, it may not be current the current implementation by manufacturers, and whenever you list one or not one, then you end up ruffling feathers.
Thank you, Peter.
And is it okay if I go back to Mario's question just briefly?
Sure.
I love, and this is really important, because the slide that I presented on standardization in the question of consumers is really important, because the regulators in the U.S., their focus is really around consumer safety and on consumer concerns, and that makes good sense. They also are interested in commercial vehicles and fleets and all of that side of the industry as well. But we're challenged with the question of, if I'm a consumer and if I have 1 vehicle or 2 vehicles, I'm going to have a max number of tires, and the question is how often and what is the potential for readability of my tires, and how frequently will I do that? Or is it, from a consumer perspective, better that I establish a relationship with the shop where I had the tires mounted, where I purchased them, and where I might take them for service? Is it better to concentrate on more of the B2B applications? And that's where the current focus happens to be today when it comes to tires and RAIN. It's really around the B2B the aftermarket, the service and repair facilities, as well as original equipment manufacturers who are producing the vehicles. And so it's not as though we have neglected consumers. It's been a little bit of a harder use case and a little bit of a harder business case to consider. But I really appreciate Mario challenging us with the question.
Good. I think that was the last question. Jackie, is there anything else?
No, there's no more questions in the Q&A box. If anyone has any other ones, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A box or into the chat.
All right, I think then it's time for us to thank you very much for your participation and thank you for joining our webinar today. If you have any questions, it's recorded. It will be shared in the RAIN kind of website. And if you have any questions about the work group or RAIN Alliance in general, don't hesitate to contact us. Me or Peter, we are very happy to share more information about the work groups. And as mentioned, hear your proposals, ideas, or maybe questions or concerns about the future challenges and how RAIN technology could enable and drive forward identification and sustainability in the tire industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.